Etched on their faces is the trauma of another Israeli airstrike. This school sheltering refugees was hit this morning. The search is for bodies trapped under fallen concrete, and many of the survivors are still reeling from the shock. We were sitting down when the bomb hit, says this man. See what's happening to us here. The Israelis say they were targeting Hamas terrorists who use these civilians as human shields, which doesn't answer this question. Where else were these people supposed to go? There were children here, says this boy, but they were reduced to pieces. At least 28 people were killed, with more than 50 injured. These pictures are not just a terrible rebuke to the warring sides, but to America's president, who's once again urged Israel's prime minister to return to diplomacy. Further north in the Gaza Strip, these children are in the intensive care unit of a hospital, one of 3 under Israeli orders to be evacuated today. The voice you can hear is the hospital director, pleading for the order to be reversed so that these victims of airstrikes can be kept safe. But many months of diplomacy, of calls for restraint, are reduced to rubble wherever you look. This woman survived, but another 6 were killed in an attack on this former clinic in Gaza City today. The same day that a UN inquiry said that Israel had committed war crimes by deliberately targeting medical facilities. All this in an area where some 400,000 Palestinians are trapped despite Israeli orders to evacuate, so that a new offensive against Hamas can begin in territory the Israelis have fought over at least once before. Little children were killed, says this woman. Their parents were killed. Give us a solution. I swear I've had enough. This afternoon, another airstrike left 4 dead in northern Gaza. The Israelis not missing an opportunity to destroy Hamas. There are still family members trapped here, says this emergency worker, and we've got no equipment to get them out. And this is what northern Gaza now looks like from the Israeli side. This disfigured skyline, a monument to diplomatic failure on a monstrous scale.
Jonathan Rugman reporting there. Well, a short time ago, there were loud explosions in the center of the Lebanese capital, Beirut, after missiles were heard flying over the city. Reports claim that Israel was targeting another leading Hezbollah official. Well, let's go live now to Beirut and our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum. Lindsay, you've just arrived in the Lebanese capital. You've had a lot of time to think about the situation there. What's your conclusion so far of where that particular war is heading?
Well, my conclusion so far is that I could smell the acrid smoke as we drove from the airport to the hotel, because these 4 blasts happened in the last hour. They are not in the southern suburbs, which is, where most of the attacks have been. That's Hezbollah's stronghold, because, of course, Hezbollah isn't there anymore. These were all in the center of town and within, a couple of city blocks. We understand that 6 people may have died. 3 of them are fairly senior Hezbollah commanders. So that shows how Israel is tracking these people individually as they move and try and get to safety. Now, that was not the only attack today. Earlier, the Israelis took out the cameras on a UNIFIL checkpoint. Now, UNIFIL is the UN peacekeeping force. Alas, not much peace to keep at the moment. They do not respond to the Israelis nor to Hezbollah, but they are there as observers. The Israelis deliberately took out the cameras so they couldn't see what was going on. Then there were attacks on one of their watchtowers. 2 of them were injured. UNIFIL at the moment is a mixture of Spanish, Indonesian and Indian UN soldiers, as I understand it. And there were also Israeli attacks today in the Bekaa Valley, presumably targeting Hezbollah people or Hezbollah facilities there. So it has been another day of death and destruction here in Lebanon.
Lindsay, when the Israeli army, the ground forces, first went in just over a week ago, the impression they gave to anyone who would care to listen was that they would be there for a short time. Do you think that that short time might actually become a very long time and that we're dealing with another potential Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon?
Look, no plan survives contact with the enemy, right? So they could say that they're going to come in for a short time and then leave. Their aim is to push Hezbollah right back from the border, they say, in order that Israeli citizens can return to their houses on the other side of the border. But if they don't stay, what's to stop Hezbollah coming back again? Well, what they would say is that they're trying to weaken Hezbollah so much that they can't possibly do that. But this is not the first Israeli occupation of Lebanon, is it? It's the fourth in the last 50 years. And they always say they're going to come in and then leave. And they find that that doesn't work for them, so they end up staying. And then you get mission creep. And maybe what we should remember is that when they came in 1982, and stayed for, I can't remember how many years, 16 years. That is why Hezbollah was formed, in order to resist Israel. So it's not just mission creep. The mission itself ends up changing completely when the Israelis invade Lebanon.
Joining me now from Tel Aviv is retired Israeli Air Force Brigadier General Relik Shafir. He was one of the pilots who struck at the Iraqi nuclear facilities and the unfinished reactor of Osirak in 1981. And as I said earlier, the Israeli War Cabinet is meeting right now, as we understand, to discuss airstrikes on Iran. It's good to have you back on the program, sir. Can we just start off, if you don't mind, with your reaction to what's been happening in Gaza? The first time we spoke was a year ago, almost exactly, and you said there had to be some kind of political horizon for the people of Gaza to aim towards, and indeed the Israeli government. Do you see any evidence of that amidst the continued killings?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a good Israeli day after plan. The number of casualties has decreased to a kind of a standstill, in the sense that the numbers have not been rising substantially for the last few months, which is a blessing. But there is no day after plan, partly because of Hamas and partly because the Israeli government is not preparing any day after plan, such as with the Palestinian Authority, etc. So we are at a kind of a limbo in Gaza, with Hamas being, I would say, suppressed to such a degree that they are not a military force to contend with at this time.
And yet, even today we saw 28 Palestinians killed in an attack on a school. I mean, these are continuing tragedies which presumably will make the situation, whatever it is at the end, more and more difficult to deal with.
Well, I'm not quite sure, because if those 28, most of those have been Hamas terrorists. So in a way, this is, in this war, of the about 40,000 casualties, Gazan casualties, close to 20,000 were Hamas terrorists. Unfortunately, with those, since they're hiding within civilian population, there has been casualties on the civilian side as well. But the numbers at this time, as Israel is controlling Gaza, the casualties are mostly Hamas terrorists, and this is a continuing war of attrition against Hamas and against Sinwar.
Okay, let's talk about Iran. As I said earlier, the War Cabinet is meeting right now to decide on which targets to hit, and there's been a lot of speculation whether it's military, oil, or possibly even nuclear. You have experience on that front. What do you think would be a sensible target in response to last week's missile attack from Iran that does not escalate this war any further?
I think if Israel hits military targets, missile sites, anti-aircraft missile sites, or launching pads for ground-to-ground missiles, maybe some of the targets of the guards, that would be something which could be held as a limited attack on legitimate targets rather than nuclear sites or oil industry, etc., that would escalate. So I reckon that the attack would be on military or paramilitary sites.
Do you think that the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is being reckless in the way that he's dealing with Iran?
Well, so far he hasn't been. I mean, the talk has been sometimes not by himself, but by other ministers have been reckless. But at the end, the actions speak for themselves. And so far, it has been calculated and not overdrawn.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Relik Shafir, Brigadier General, thank you very much indeed. And an update on the strike in central Beirut that Lindsay spoke to us about earlier. 11 people are being reported dead in that strike. Now, as we also reported earlier, scores of Palestinians are apparently dead in strikes in Gaza today, as well as 3 Israeli soldiers. Many are trapped by the bombing and the fighting. Well, earlier I spoke to Anas Saker, a master's student who lives with his family in the Jabalya refugee camp. I spoke to him on the phone. He told us that his home was bombed by the IDF at the weekend. He says that he and his family have been trapped for 6 days under the rubble. Currently 11 of them are injured, 2 of them are dead. In this very distressing phone call, I asked him what the situation was like.
We couldn't see anything until we get out from under the rubble. And I searched for the injured, and they were in critical conditions, and some died in our hands. I pulled them out from under the rubble, and now we are waiting for relief so we can get out of this place.
So you've had no help, and you still have the injured people as well as the dead brothers in the house with you?
Yes, we are in the house and we cannot get out, and I am currently among the injured. I am also injured in my head and hand, and I am bandaging their wounds while I am injured, and women and children are injured.
I can hear, yes, I can hear your sister in the background there, Anas. Is the IDF now surrounding you?
I can hear the shooting. I beg you, we are dying.
Anas, do you know why your house was targeted by the Israeli army?
We are all in one room and we couldn't get out. And I do not know why they bombed us. We suddenly heard the bombing from everywhere, and I swear that we have no connections to any party.
Have you tried to get outside the house, maybe holding a white flag, or do you think that's too dangerous?
I tried to bring the injured who were thrown out of the house. They shot at me, and with difficulty, I brought the injured back inside. Any attempt to get us out without coordination will put all of our lives in danger.
That's just such an awful situation to be in. I can't imagine what you're going through. But Anas, thank you very much for talking to us, and I hope that you and your family get through this.